Wait, I wasn't ready. Oh! Welcome to this Friday's live stream here at the Nutmeg Tavern. You did the countdown and I wasn't ready for it. So it's been a wonderful week. Let me see. I'm your host, John Townsend. Behind the bar is Ryan. He's been hard at work this week and last weekend, and he's done a great job with the drink today, I'm sure.
It tastes pretty good.
Yeah. Behind the scenes, behind what you can see. Aaron's on the console, making that live stream happen and keeping the internet in shape.
Right,
and then
right.
in the question seat, in the box with the chat is Kyle back there.
Hello,
so
everybody.
Thank you, Kyle, for doing that question thing. If you've got questions, shoot them in the chat box. He'll pick them up and feed them to me when it's time. So, I've got this drink, which is a wonderful nutmeggy drink. But we have a special drink for today. What is it, Ryan?
It is Wine of the Gods.
It's got to be good,
very
right?
excited about this one. In a dish, pear and then round lemon slices and apple slices.
Right.
Layer them. Cover them with powdered sugar. Repeat the process for as much as you would like to make.
Right.
Pour wine on top. Let it sit for a few hours. And then sift it, squeeze it, and serve. It's that simple. To feel godly.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, it's
Maybe?
just, no. But this recipe comes out of this French cookbook from the 17th century that's been translated into English. I've used it for a couple of episodes. The fish pie, which the fish that was, the sort of pastry that's in the shape of a fish. That one came out of here along with some other ones. It's a great reference to see what 17th century French cooking was like, and then how that's different from English cookery of the 18th century, and of course our cookery today. So wonderful cookbook for that. It's really hard to get these days. It tends to be a very expensive book to get a hold of, but we also have Professed Cook, which is a similar kind of cookbook on the website. Wow, it's got a nice dense look to it.
Is that what you look for in your cocktails?
No, not normally. That's not what I'm looking for in a wine. So you've tried this, right?
I have.
Does it need nutmeg, or does it go?
I would put nutmeg in it.
Not until at least I've tried it. Well, it's a wonderful wine flavor, but it's not. It's all these other things that have come into it. The juices of the fruits and the sugar really temper that. So it's actually pretty good.
That started out as a pretty dry wine.
Right.
So it's pretty sweet now.
It definitely did. And you came in and kind of, the recipe does not call for the exact amount of sugar.
Right.
Or
so
any of that.
Yeah, initially when I was doing it, I was just kind of sprinkling enough sugar to try to coax the juices out of the fruit.
Right.
You got to go a little heavier with that.
And
at the end, I probably added to that pitcher, there's a full bottle of wine, and I probably added another 2.5 tablespoons of powdered sugar.
Right. So earlier he was digging around to see what other references there were to similar recipes, and you found one. What was the sugar ratio on that one?
It was 3/4 pound of sugar to a pint of wine.
I don't know if it would
I think
be
they
more
were
like
making candy.
You're right,
Just
more
little
like
chunks of
wine
sugar.
sludge or something. So we didn't do that. No, this one's really good.
You guys want to try it?
Yeah, I'll try a little bit.
Although I think nutmeg would bring it up just that notch. But I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. Do we have any questions, Kyle?
We do.
We do.
Are there going to be any more Kitchen Garden episodes this spring?
Kitchen Garden episodes. If I do any Kitchen Garden episodes, it will be at other sites. This spring is going to be tough here at Townsend's, and I don't think I'm going to be able to pull in a project quite like that. But if we are at a site that has kitchen gardens, I will definitely connect with them, and undoubtedly I will have some opportunities for that, hopefully. So that's a great suggestion.
I just received my catalog and I recognize some faces. Is anyone in the catalog friends and family?
Yeah, we basically everyone in the catalog is some kind of friends or family. Sometimes it'll be a lot of people are straight up family folks, and then there are other people who work here. James Townsend and Son, like Kyle's son ended up being in this year's catalog in the.
I'm so proud.
Yeah, he did a great job. He did a great job, and that checker picture is just it's right there. He was a great kid to work with. It's always fun to work with different people in doing photo sessions, and of course. What's your son's name? I forget. Reese. Reese, yeah. Reese. So Reese is just, well, that's hilarious. Getting Reese in front of the camera. And anyway.
Yeah, he can turn up the cheese.
Yeah, he does. He does.
Pretty good at that.
When did dueling fall out of favor?
Dueling fall out of favor. You know, I was just up at Kalamazoo last weekend. Ryan and I and Nicole were up there at Kalamazoo. Had an excellent weekend. It was really fun, and we ended up talking a little while with a guy over in Fort Wayne, right, who is really interested in bringing 18th century fencing into the reenacting world. There's some of that. There has been some of that in the past, and so that made me go back and look at some references to fencing and its relationship to dueling. And I still think it's certainly happening to a great extent here in the 18th century. It's a little tougher to do that research until you really, really dig in. But we know, something like Aaron Burr was killed in a duel. So that's certainly happening in the 18th century. Now, I think they were probably doing pistols or something, but there was still a lot of sword activity going on in the 18th century. And there are a lot of very interesting sword dueling kind of books that are happening in the 18th century. I was really surprised. There was a good, 8 or 10 different titles in this one referenced website. So I thought that was really interesting.
I'm going to read a few donations real quick.
Sure, go ahead, Aaron.
Thanks to everyone who's donated so far. We appreciate it. It helps us out a lot.
Yeah.
Two donations from Nicole Marley.
There you go, Nicole.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate your comments. Tony Smith, thank you.
Thank you, Tony.
Hey, Urez, saw you guys at K-Zoo, but the place was so busy I didn't get a chance to say hi.
That's too bad.
Anyway, did American gentry types carry dress small swords, or was that mostly a European thing? And then let me get this last one real quick. Max are cool. Thank you. Hooray, Townsends were sipping a couple of glasses of Madeira along with you.
Madeira, yeah.
Madeira.
Yeah.
So anyway, dress small swords.
It's a good question, and I'll bet that swords are a little more popular in Europe than they are as sort of daily wear, fancy wear in town. But I'll bet you it's still happening in North America. Probably not as common, but I don't have a particular reference that I'm basing that on other than just kind of intuition and, just the concepts that you see. It's a little tougher to get that sort of research in where people are talking about that. And of course, you don't have the artwork here in North America to judge that from paintings.
So one of the commenters said something about how busy it was at Kalamazoo, and they said it was a record-breaking year.
Yeah.
As far as people through the gate, right?
Yeah.
So that's pretty awesome. But thank you to everyone who came up and talked to us.
Yeah, we had a tremendous time. We were there. We did a special session with Frank and Carol and Rick and Hillary about the Maggie DVD, and the response was wonderful. A lot of folks were at that session, and it was similar to the Q&A video that we did with them the week before. Great time, and just lots of people coming up and interacting. So we had a real good time with that. So really want to thank everyone, and of course Ryan and Nicole did a great job interacting with all those folks. Me, I just stood in the corner. So anyway,
you got any more questions, Kyle?
I do. Was the practice of first sleep and second sleep something most people did?
First sleep and second sleep are good question, my question would be: is that a reference to the idea of being up in the middle of the night and being active, sort of reading or intellectually, usually alone? I think some of that's happening in the 18th century. I don't know if that's a really big trend or not, but it's interesting, and especially for some people who just can't sleep all the way through the night. They just get up and have activity and do things, and then sleep more in the second session.
I like to practice first sleep and second sleep during the workday.
Yeah.
That's what I normally do.
What kind of hot, spicy dishes did people eat in the 18th century?
You'll certainly see references to cayenne pepper showing up in recipes, and there is a certain quantity of Indian cookery that's moving into the Great Britain cooking repertoire because of that colonization and some of those food things coming back. So, say military men serving in India would come back to Great Britain, and they'd bring back some of those food tastes and sort of introduce them into England. So there's a certain quantity of that happening, but I think most of it is blander than what we would consider spicy food.
I'm sure you've answered this before, but what's up with the style of hat you always have on?
Yeah. Well, this is a comfortable hat. It's a workman's cap from the 18th century. It might even be known as a nightcap. They had very similar cloth caps. People wore hats all the time in the 18th century, and they would consider themselves undressed unless they had a hat on or a hat maybe under their arm or with them. Hats were part of your standard clothing, and so this is the kind of hat that you might wear, not in dress, not around town, but if you're a worker and you're at your workplace, you're doing something, you would wear a hat like this because that's what you would do. I don't know, keep dirt out of your hair? I have no idea, but it's a typical workman's hat of the 18th century.
Aside from pasta, was there much Italian influence in the 18th century?
Well, in English cuisine or in North American cuisine, good question. I don't think there's a tremendous quantity. I think really pasta is the main thing that's coming in from that. Sometimes the idea of, say, ice creams are probably from sort of the Italian cuisine, and that's certainly starting to happen in the 18th century a lot more. I'm not sure whether that's completely an Italian thing or not, but that's probably the only other thing I can think of off the top of my head.
Have you ever considered traveling to Fort Mackinac in Michigan? It has daily reenactments.
Yeah,
Yes.
and Ryan's been up there. Was it 2 years ago?
Yes, in September.
Ryan was up there 2 years ago with his family. I have not been up there, I don't think ever, but of course I want to.
It's a really great site. If you're watching and you haven't been
Yeah.
there, I would suggest it's beautiful. The town's neat. You can spend a nice day and a half, 2 days there and not run out of things to do.
What type of vegan foods did they eat back in the day?
Now, vegan. So there was certainly a quantity of we'll call it vegetarianism that was happening in England and North America, but generally that was an economic thing. They couldn't afford meat, and
even then, they're a lot of times still using animal fats to cook with,
right,
or using leather for veganism.
Right. So the ethical vegetarianism that is kind of sort of in the forefront today, that wasn't really a thing in the 18th century. You don't see very much of that. So what was that was just going off on a rabbit trail on that. What was the real question there? What kind of foods or?
Were there vegan food?
What
kind of vegan foods?
So there was certainly a quantity of that. They were eating grains of all kinds of sorts, and you're going to see a multitude of that sort of thing going on. There were cookbooks that specifically were created, or let's say cookbooks that were gathered recipes that were inexpensive and were generally vegetarian in their nature.
There might be people in the chat that are vegan that reenact and that could have more information on that too. That'd be pretty neat if they chimed in.
How do the pears taste after soaking them in wine and sugar?
Pears. This one didn't have. When he said pear, he meant pairing the
which I skipped. Because you get a lot of flavor from the
Right,
peel.
exactly. I'm surprised they didn't actually
Yeah.
say put dried peeled in it or
That's what
whatever.
I thought too, so I just left them on. But yes, there were no pears, but apples and lemons, and honestly, I turned them all into mush when I pulverized it when I was squeezing all the juices out. So I don't know what they tasted like.
And you kind of wonder from that recipe whether or not they actually intended you to do that. It wasn't in the direction specifically, but to really get those flavors out, you're going to have to do more than just cut them and pop
Right.
them in there. So,
Unless, I mean, maybe I could have not used enough sugar to coax the juices out, but it's powdered sugar too, so I don't know if it's going to do that as well.
right.
I've read a lot about cherry wine in some of Burr's letters. Where did it come from, and have you tried it? Is it like Kirsch from Germany?
Wow. You're way out there for me. I have no idea. I've never tried either one of those, so I'm not really familiar.
I would really like to.
Yeah,
That sounds yummy.
Sounds good. So I'll look that one up. I've certainly seen references to all kinds of interesting fruit wines that are showing up in the 18th century. Some of them are as simple as, take an existing wine and put the smushed fruit in there and let it do its thing. There's a lot of flavoring versus making the wines from the items. Both of these are happening in the 18th century.
Well, looking through cocktails, you see a cherry juice used a lot in cocktails, but I haven't.
Cherry
seen
bounce, yeah.
This question kind of ties in with that one. Would you ever do a segment on mead? It was around America was it around America in the 18th century?
Well, we've referenced mead before, and there's some Q&As that were specifically based on or where we talked about mead and sort of the similar things, cider and perry of the 18th century, and there's certainly a popularity of mead that's it was much stronger in the 15th or 16th, 17th century. It's falling out of favor in the 18th century. Still showing up in the recipe books and lots of recipes for it. It's one of those fairly simple things to brew, just like cider and perry and different kinds of beers. The mead is similar in that in some instances the recipes, hey, you just mix it up and you let it ferment on its own, sort of from wild fermentation. Other times their recipes are much more, they expect you to add a yeast after boiling it. But it's there in the 18th century, but it's falling out of favor.
Hey, let's talk about the mugs right there on the
so
table.
hey, a lot of people have been asking about merch items and mugs from the past. We got a brand new batch of Nutmeg Tavern mugs here. They came in yesterday, so I had time to put them on the website today. Beautiful black with the blue. It's got the Boar's Head Nutmeg Tavern logo on it, and there's one of the most popular color matches or color combinations we've had, the chestnut and the green, again with the Nutmeg Tavern logo on there.
What's on the bottom?
Well, this one's.
I didn't.
These are all three of them are. Oh, there's one.
Yes.
This one doesn't have anything on it.
John's arm almost fell off yesterday.
Yeah. I was signing and signing and signing. All of the mugs are signed on the bottom. Like I could forget that. All the mugs are signed on the bottom. If you want some cool piece of merch with John's scratch on it, these mugs are available. Aaron's got a link in the description section. You put a link in the chat too. He'll put a link in the chat.
And we listened. I think that these two color combinations were requested during the chat. We were trying to listen.
Right. And hopefully we've got enough that they'll be available for a day or two. A lot of times they disappear real quickly, especially when they're a real popular color like this. So we ordered a larger quantity so we would have more available. So if you're interested in one of those mugs, there you go.
I'm going to do some donations real quick.
Yeah.
If that's okay. Thanks again to everyone donating.
Yeah.
Bobby Force One, thank you.
Thank you.
Wyoming Lady, so important to keep history alive. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mortar and Ivy, thank you. What was the last one? Oh, another one from Tony Smith. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is
Thanks,
the
all.
shop ever going to sell sleeping shirts and caps?
Sleeping
We'll
shirts.
go back to it.
Yeah.
Indie Kitty 1. How long is a cloak? I am 5'4". I want one if it's not too long. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is Yakov. I believe it's a Russian. That sounds. I think that's a character from a book. Could you please apologize for the fish pie? I'm so sorry.
Could I apologize for the fish pie?
Yeah. Schubert, 1776. And then Zach Velarde. Thank you.
Thanks,
thanks
everyone.
everyone.
Yeah.
So what was the one with the question was?
Nightshirt?
Let's visit this apologize for the fish pie.
Yeah. Apologize for the fish pie.
I guess he didn't like the fish pie.
Did he try it?
I don't know. Let me see in the chat if
Was
anyone
it
else is
bad?
talking about it.
There's
Oh, it was really good.
It's such a cool picture.
Aaron tried it.
It was
I didn't
awesome.
try it.
Turned out
I
for
loved
him. And he's probably not a big fish guy. None of us here.
Well,
are
I
big
do.
fish guys.
I actually really do love fish.
Well, there you go.
So
I love that Michael Dragoo doesn't like fish, but he always brings fish.
he
Every
always does.
time he brings a fish recipe, I don't get it.
I don't know. I don't know.
So the night shirts and nightcaps.
I'm still stuck on the fish pie thing.
Yeah.
It was really cool looking. Okay, I knew it as soon as I read the directions. In my mind's eye, like, I have to do this one. I could have chosen a better fish species, undoubtedly, but I wanted a cool looking fish, and that's the one that I found.
Oh, I guess people have been asked. I think it's just a joke. Don't
Oh.
worry. Anyway, let's
Next.
move on.
Nightshirt and nightcap.
Yeah.
We essentially
The standard work shirt that we sell is really long. The new picture in the catalog, we've extended them, so they're really long.
Well, and even if you want that classic, like, Christmas Carol looking night shirt, the work smock is like 6 inches longer than the work shirt. So,
Right.
I mean, it comes down mid-calf probably.
Almost,
so.
yeah, almost to your knee. So the new linen work shirt, nice and long, really good for the night shirt kind of a thing. And a cap, well, these are real similar to the work caps are real similar to a nightcap. They might have used a white linen instead of the striped fabric, which would probably be an interesting product. Actually, I was kind of thinking about that earlier today. I don't know why, but I was, which is weird.
You were anticipating this
I
question.
was. I premeditated it.
There was another one in there, wasn't there?
Yeah. It was how long is a cloak?
Oh, yeah, 5'4". That's a pretty normal size. You shouldn't have any problem with the ladies' cloaks.
On the website, I know that it gives measurements.
Yeah.
And if the women's cloak seems like it's a little too long, the girls' cloaks are pretty long still, and they might fit just as well.
If you're more of a petite person.
Yeah, we've had a lot of women that are more petite buy them and wear them. So
Yeah.
David Dinelli, thank you so much.
Thanks.
No questions. Thanks for all the great content
Yeah.
and great products. I'm still trying to figure out this fish pie thing.
it's okay. It's a funny joke.
Oh, I think they're bad that you called it a pie and it was misleading. Oh,
It was
Fish
in a pastry.
pastry,
Yeah,
fish
it's pastry.
pie.
It was a fish pie.
yeah, it says pastry. Fish baked in pastry.
Yeah.
On to the next question.
There you go.
Make it a good one, Kyle.
Oh, they're all good. I don't know what you're
They're all
talking about.
Make it a good one.
Can you make an episode on colonial colonial era hunting? Thank you.
Well, we've wanted to. We've got a possible plan in the future, but I'm not even going to go
It's
there.
not that we haven't tried.
Right.
Sometimes you go hunting and you just don't get lucky.
Right. In fact, if you looked at last Wednesday or this Wednesday's video with Keith,
Yeah.
you'll see some B-roll where we were trying to do some of that, and it turned out for B-roll for that video, and it was perfect.
Right, and it was an awesome experience because his dogs were so well trained.
Oh gosh, those
It
were
was
amazing.
really cool to watch
Yes.
them work together.
It was. Those mountain curs are amazing
Yeah.
little dogs. So
Yeah, that's a tough thing. Like you said, you go out to do a video and it doesn't go the way. Yeah, it's a risk
yeah.
trying to get a video out of a hunting trek or something.
Are there many references to settlers adopting native methods of hunting and trapping on the frontier when firearms and ammunition were scarce?
I don't know about necessarily they're always scarce in a way. They're expensive things. They're heavy. You quite often want to not use up your ammunition in that kind of situation where to replenish it can take a long time. Gunpowder is damageable, so that you use whatever methods are easiest and most available to you. So you certainly see an adoption of some of those techniques when they're appropriate in a lot of those sort of frontier situations.
I want to know about kilts. Were they popular in the 18th century?
That's a super good question, and there's going to be some really super kilt experts out there that will be able to point you to better information than I can. Kilts, what I know is that kilts probably get a lot more popular in the 19th century, a revival of what's going on earlier, because there was a in the early 19th century, and as you go on, there's a revival of Scots information and excitement and want for that information. There's definitely a suppression in England of that sort of thing in the mid 18th century because of the rebellion, 1745 and all that, and some of those things were outlawed in certain situations. Their swords were taken away and they were turned into dirks, and there may have been situations where kilts and plaids were illegal. But I don't have the specifics on that, so I won't go any further into that.
Did they eat much eggplant in the 18th century?
I have no idea. I've not seen much reference to eggplant.
Did they eat a lot of rice in the 18th century?
Rice was popular, and especially rice coming from South Carolina. Even that was a heavy export item, where it was exported from South Carolina into Great Britain, and it was an inexpensive food source, like it is today.
So do you want to talk about your super interesting book?
Yeah, so kind of on topic. It's always been a topic that is never very far away from when I'm doing research. Has to do with both criminal things, what happens to prisoners, the connectedness with indentured servants and even enslaved Africans. All those things are a common item that's happening in the 18th century in Great Britain and in North America, and it's a really, really interesting story, sometimes a very painful story, a difficult story to research at times, but it's so different than what's happening today that it is something that really draws interest, because it's different, but we can relate to it and understand it, or not in some circumstances. One of the most interesting books, I think, is a collection. This is Don Haggist's book called Wives, Slaves, and Servant Girls, and it's a collection of advertisements for runaways in North America. This one's from 1770 through 1783, so the Revolutionary War time period, a pretty tight little time period, and it's advertising for all these people who have run away. So they might be enslaved Africans, they might be people who've stolen things from you, or they might be indentured servants, or sometimes it's just called servants. In the 18th century, somebody runs away from your house and you need to get them back, and you have some sort of legal recourse to do that. And the advertisements are incredibly informative. And sometimes there's a whole story inside this advertisement, or you can read between the lines, right? So there's this one I'll just pull out because they're all interesting. One of the most interesting things is you get physical descriptions and you get clothing descriptions, as well as descriptions of how people talk, or their mannerisms from these advertisements, because they're trying to find these people, and that's the way they can identify them. $0.25 reward. Run away in the night between the 4th and 5th of this instant February from the subscriber living in Germantown, a German servant girl named Elizabeth. I can't pronounce her last name. Elizabeth, of a melancholy temper, red eyes, speaks Low Dutch and French, is about 26 years old, had on when she went away a new linsey red, blue, and white striped jacket, a white and dark and light blue striped petticoat, new fulled stockings, and almost new shoes. Whoever takes up said servant girl and brings her to her master shall have the above reward. And then there's sort of a P.S. footnote that comes in afterwards, and it says, any person knowing where she is and is inclined to buy her time of servitude, it being 3 years and 4 months, may have her very cheap. So I thought this was interesting because that is a very, very low sum of money to retrieve this person. So $0.25. The most of them in here are something like 2 guineas or $8 or $4. This person apparently really didn't want her back all that bad, and certainly was willing to sell her again for a very small quantity of money. Kind of reminded me of Maggie's story, where it's like, well, you can buy her. This is the time that's left on this particular person.
So that makes me wonder if they have somebody that's run away that is indentured.
Mm-hmm.
Are they legally required to try to retrieve them? Because that's almost kind of like I'm gonna make it look the part, but I really don't want to go through the trouble.
It
right?
certainly feels like it from that particular advertisement. And there may be some of that. There's still some responsibility. And indentured servitude certainly had responsibilities on both sides. But generally, I would think if you ran away, that the responsibility on the owner's side was much smaller. But that's an excellent question. There may be more to that than we think about today. Well, I wasn't sure where I was going to go with that. Another similar book, if you're interested in knowing about people, people who were transported. I don't have a link to this in the description section, but this one's Harlots, Hussies, and Poor Unfortunate Women, and it's a story it's a collection of information about transportation of female convicts 1718 through 1783, a similar time period, and that would be women who got in trouble with the law for various reasons and who were transported to North America, and part of that was an indentured servitude at that. So you would go and you would automatically be indented or serving 7 years, sometimes 14 years as an indentured type of servant. And there was certainly a lot of complaint on our side from saying, stop sending your convicts over here. We the folks over on this side weren't all that happy about getting an influx of convicts. But they were, and the vast majority of these females that were transported to North America were transported to Maryland, possibly Virginia some, but most of them going to Maryland. And there was some really interesting things I was reading in here about the idea of taxation, and that these, if they were white female indentured servants, they weren't taxed like other people. Like if you had enslaved Africans, you were taxed on them. If you had regular free people, black or white, you were taxed on them as a landowner, but not indentured white women, which is it's like, okay, what was going on with that law? And undoubtedly that was an encouragement from the government side trying to get those women to be put into the workforce. So just super interesting things that are happening here in the 18th century about what their legal system is like, what their justice is like. Very interesting.
Let's use this as a quick segue to talk about the Maggie Project one more time.
Yeah, so you probably saw a couple Mondays ago where we had the Maggie Delaney, her story. We've had a live stream or two about it and a Q&A on Wednesday, and that whole package is put together as a DVD, and there's a music CD that's part of this. It's a fold-out thing. There's 2 discs in there. This is available. A lot of people want to share this story, either with libraries or with schools or whatever. So we put this together as a DVD package. It's available on the website, and it's a great story, and there's just so much to learn about what's going on with this kind of a story that we put together as a package. It's an hour-long DVD with that whole Maggie story, along with the music that's inspired by it.
Any questions, Kyle?
I do.
All right.
How does nutmeg actually grow?
Nutmeg is a little like small shrubbery kind of tree that grows in the Indies, the East Indies, kind of South Pacific area, and the nutmeg is a little nut, and around it grows the mace. So when you see mace, that's related. It's actually like the outer husk from the little nutmeg thing, and it grew out there, and it was very, very exclusive. The trade was sort of locked in and monopolized, but then that kind of secret got out, and it started being grown in other places. And it's in that 18th century time period where we see it going from that exclusive, monopolized, highly expensive spice to something that was much more readily available. And so all of a sudden, just anybody could have that expensive nutmeg flavor in their food.
Now it's grown with lots of little lamps in the basement at Townsend's. We've got
I've got a
lots of nutmeg.
no.
Was yogurt a common food made in the period? Could that be used to preserve milk longer?
If they had yogurt, they didn't call it yogurt. That's for certain. And I don't know that there's anything quite out there that's like that. Most of the time, milk is preserved as butter and cheese.
Are there any mashed soup recipes from the 18th century? If so, what would have been used to mash the ingredients finely enough?
Yes, is the answer. Many times you'll have a lot of soups where we would leave the ingredients much more sort of in pieces or whole to give it tooth, to give it, something. They would certainly cream or mash those items, so like we would do with a tomato soup, right? We whir it all up until it's just puree. They would use the food processor of the 18th century, which is a mortar and pestle. Or they might just have a big ceramic bowl and a masher and mash it that way, and then put the items through a sieve. So a lot of times you'll read recipes and they'll say, whether it's turnips or peas or something like that, and they'll say boil it until it totally is broken down, and then put it through a sieve, and then you've got your soup.
The pink pancakes is a really good example of that. We pulverized those beets and turned it into that sort of a paste.
Right. The beets. That was an interesting recipe. Looks interesting. Looks really good.
I want to get some more donations. Thanks again, everyone. David Greek, thank you. Sorry, I got distracted by the door. Zach, thank you. Any chance we'll get a Native American recipe? It's a great question. And then a donation from Gail Giddings. This is a good question. Are there many single women who do 18th century reenactments solo? So which of those do you want to do first?
Native American cooking. Again, that all has to do with who we connect with, and we've got some contacts there. We just haven't connected with them recently, but we need to.
It's just about different sets of people being very busy.
Yeah,
it's hard to get the stars to align.
Yes, but yes, I would like to get more of that in the repertoire. What was the other question?
Single women who do 18th century reenactments solo.
Yeah, so there is certainly a quantity of that, but I mean, I guess it depends on what you mean by solo. There are groups that you can get connected with, so it really doesn't matter whether you're a single person or you have a family to go with you. There are certain obvious things that you have to work around, but a lot of times it's not that big of a problem. There is some group of folks that go with the group of long hunters that we've connected with a lot last year.
Their significant others just weren't interested, and so they went. And
right.
But that solo thing, that's weird because, I mean, you generally camp with friends. It's normally something that's social. But they come and they go by themselves and they meet up with friends when they get there.
Right. So it wouldn't be out of the ordinary at all.
Is that it, Aaron?
That's it.
Okay. What gemstones would have been common in the colonies, and did the colonies export any gemstones?
Not that I know of.
That's a big question.
Yeah. That's a tougher question too. Not one I've got a good straight up answer for. I don't think that the colonies were famous for any of that sort of thing.
Have you discussed burials in the old days?
Only on the edge. I know we talked a good bit about that sort of thing with the folks down at Connor Prairie, because they do some programming like that, and there was some of that sort of going on at Martin Station a couple years ago. So it's certainly touched on in the reenacting world.
Did superstition ever have a role in food choice?
Superstition and food choice. Probably.
Well,
but I'm not sure.
Is the nightshades thing connected to superstition at all, or is that just
Well,
ignorance?
if that's what they mean, there were foods that we have today that they would consider. It's like, oh, that's probably bad for you. But I don't know if superstition is the word that we want to look for there or not.
Were dowries common practice in the 18th century? Did people give gifts at weddings?
Yeah, there was certainly some of that going on. It probably doesn't look like anything that we have today, but there were dowry situations. There were many different similar things that were happening in the 18th century, like paying for apprenticeships, and those all are kind of interrelated, having to do with relationships and cementing them with money, or purchasing them with money that we wouldn't do today. So yeah, there's certainly some of that going on.
Hey, let's talk about those really cool-looking mugs that are sitting on your table there.
Folks have been asking about Nutmeg Tavern merch and things that have to do with the live stream. We've got these. They're really, I don't know. It says they hold 14 ounces. They look like they hold like 16 ounces.
Yeah, I think they're closer to 16.
Nice, good size mug. Not too big and not too small. Boy, those Christmas mugs were big. They were big. They like hold a quart or something. These are a really good size mug. And made here in the United States. They're like hand-turned, really, really nice pieces. And the logo that shows up on them is just really good looking. Got some beautiful glazes here. The chestnut and green, a real popular color, and then the black with the blue, another super popular color. These guys, we have a limited quantity. It takes 3 months to get these after the order. We place the order. It takes a long time for them to get made and produced. So basically, it doesn't seem to matter how many we order. They all get sold within a week or so. So if you're interested in one of these mugs, jump in there, and there's a link in the description section. They're always popular, and I enjoy them. I use them all the time.
Yeah, we've got a bunch at home in our kitchen. They're great. So we had a painting we wanted to talk about today. We should probably do that before it gets too much further in.
Pop that painting up. Unfortunately, I don't have it right in front of me, but of course, I've looked at it enough that I know exactly what we're looking at. And pictures in the 18th century always tell a story. And these tell an interesting story in and of themselves. A lot of people are asking about the German kitchen, the fire up on the countertop sort of situation. This picture shows that going on. And this is a painting from, or an illustration from about 1660. And there's this great, really, really interesting book from Nuremberg, sort of a collection of documents where they would have sort of a directory of artisans and craftspeople in the town, and they would have these sort of, we would take pictures today. They did these paintings, and so there would be paintings for bakers, and this is a cook person, and you can see her in her kitchen. Now, they didn't go and paint her from in her real kitchen. They took a picture of the typical kitchen, and they put her face on a person in this typical kitchen. But it's still a very, very interesting painting. I love the fish on the gridiron, ready to get shoved over that fire and cooked up. You can see what they're expecting to cook. There's also a little pot back there on the fire. You can see all these pots and pans around there. And those are all to say, look at this rich, household or rich location where she's cooking. She has a lot of cooking vessels available to her. That's an expensive thing. It's saying this person's wealthy, right? So great picture. We've got her name in there somewhere. I can't read the sort of Gothic German script, but I think it's on the Sifting the Past. It has her name. I think it's Anne Marie. There you go. Something.
Yeah, I'm gonna post that link in the chat. People were asking for it.
So, just so much great stuff. When you go digging through paintings, illustrations, there's all these different sorts that are available to look at, and they all tell their own story. So that's just one of those great, fun paintings, and you get to see that hearth and how it was kind of being used there. And really typical. We call it the German kitchen here, the one we use, and in that circumstance, that's an illustration from Germany.
What you got, Kyle?
How did they make dyes in the 18th century?
There were a lot of typical vegetable dyes going on in the 18th century, and there were the start of chemical dyes happening. And there's the whole idea of dyeing and understanding the technology behind that, where the colors come from, and how one kind of dye will turn out one color if you're using an iron pot, and if you use a brass pot, you get a totally different color. There's a lot of great information, and it's a great skill, craftsman kind of skill to dig into there for the 18th century. And there are a lot of folks who've done that kind of research. So
there are a lot of good demonstrators at historic events.
Andromeda the cat just came into the...
Wow. That
freaked me out.
Welcome to my tavern.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, there she is.
So there are a lot of great demonstrators doing dye work at events too. So
Yeah.
that's something that you can easily see if you went to a historic
And we
event.
do have one interview with... I can't remember their name. Anyway.
I don't remember this interview.
Let me get a couple donations, and then we're probably getting close to...
Hopefully she won't knock over the camera.
She literally just unplugged the camera. I'm not kidding. That almost gave me a heart attack. All right, I want to do some of these donations real quick. Jordan, thank you.
Thank you, Jordan.
I love your channel. Best channel on YouTube, so educational and entertaining. Thank you for that. Captain Krabu, thank you. Keltoid 5, thank you. What about long pepper? Was it already on its way out like mead? Are there any U.S. vendors? I've seen it offered from India and Australia.
Yeah, if you dig on long pepper, you can find it on Amazon. It's not that tough. There's at least a couple of American sources for it. But I've never found it in a local store. And yes, it's definitely on its way out in the 18th century. You'll see it referenced in some of the recipes, but they're probably holdover 17th century recipes showing up in 18th century cookbooks. Was there another question there?
That was it. Thanks, everyone.
Oh.
Yeah.
He has some Patreon names you wanted to go
Yeah, I got
over.
some Patreon names. So people support us on Super Chat. They support us by buying merch, and some folks support us on Patreon, which is a way to sort of monthly pay small quantities of money. And we've got a list of the new Patreon supporters. I haven't been able to do this for the last week or two, so we got some new names here. Sandon Sims. We got somebody called Exile 13. That sounds exciting. Paul Absher, Clemens Schmitz, Nancy Gross, somebody that's just called Tina, Jennifer Reese, there's a Chris, there's a Jean, there's a Diane Smith, and there's a Laura S. Lindsay. Thank you, all you great Patreon supporters. You help make it happen. We always kind of need this known fixed amount to help us get equipment or pay for going to a particular location. So that helps us a lot. So thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you very much.
The cat is really going to make this.
A lot of people are asking to see Andromeda.
She's a good
Let me
cat.
see if I can get her.
She's a big cat.
She's quite a load.
There's
a
Andromeda.
fluffy cat.
This is Lauren's cat, and Lauren lives in the store here. She's got an apartment, and
That cat looks like it's having just a great
it's
time.
a very, very nice cat. It wanders around the store occasionally.
Every once in a while, it's downstairs by the front door.
Yeah.
It scares me when I come in.
It's supposed to be in another part of the building.
Lightning round questions?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's
All
do
right.
it.
What are we cooking on Monday?
Ooh, guess what? We were going to skip Monday because we're trying to catch our breath.
We just finished the catalog.
Just finished the catalog. It's going to be really cool, but it's been a difficult process while continuing to do videos and all that other stuff.
Can we bring back more Josh?
We can try. Occasionally, I threaten to have Josh in a cooking video, but I don't know if we would survive it.
We have big plans for this summer that include Josh. I know that.
Would 18th century soldiers be equipped with fascine knives?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Certainly. In fact, if you go to Fort Niagara, there's one that was dug up there at that location, undoubtedly served out to the troops to go and do particular things there around the fort.
We used to carry them on our website.
Yeah. And I may reintroduce them now. I've got a different design that'll be a little easier to produce.
Mm-hmm.
Is it feasible to send a mug to the UK? Yes, it is.
And Kyle says yes, because he does that sort of thing.
Kyle's the shipmaster here.
I wouldn't say that, but
I mean, in the room, you're the shipmaster.
yeah, in here, yeah. Did blacksmiths do well financially?
I think it was a pretty okay job. There were a lot of blacksmiths. It was the kind of thing that, I mean, there was always a great demand. Now, it was hard work, but there was always demand.
And last one, have you ever tried making Seneca ghost bread?
No, I don't even know what Seneca ghost bread
sounds
is.
great.
We're going to have to look that one up.
Talk about superstition in your food.
Yeah, what's going on with that? Now, there are some really weird things like salt rising bread, but you don't even want to know about salt rising bread.
Now I just want to know about it.
Oh, you don't know. You don't want to know about salt rising bread. It's quite a story. Anyway, no, not familiar with Seneca ghost bread.
That was the last question?
That was it.
Let's talk about those mugs one more time.
One more time, if you're interested in Nutmeg Tavern mugs, 2 colors. We have a small, I'll call it a limited quantity of these guys available. If you want one, jump in, go to the link, check that out. Those guys are fun and they always disappear quickly. So, also, if you're interested in the Maggie DVD, that link is there, should be there in the description section. Carol did such an amazing job, and Rick and Hillary. And hey, Frank and Carol, if you're out there, hello. And Rick and Hillary, they're probably out there too. Hello. Mom's probably out there. There's all kinds of people out there who like to watch the show. So thank you guys so much for that. Anything else?
That's it.
One more donation.
One more donation.
Keltoid 5 again. Thank you.
Thank you,
Keltoid 5. You're always there every week. Thank you so much. And I want to thank all of you guys out there supporting us with Super Chat, supporting us with just watching the videos, commenting on them, sharing with people. That's amazingly important for what we do here on the channel. Not every video is an onion video that goes whatever that onion video did. I have no idea why the onion video did what it did, but not every video is like that. It takes people like you to make this channel happen. So thank you guys out there for all you do. Thanks, Aaron. Thanks, Kyle. Thanks, Ryan. We'll see you next week.